Right, let me ask you something. Have you checked your council tax bill recently? I mean, properly looked at it? Because what I'm about to tell you today might genuinely make you want to sit down with a cup of tea and have a good long think about your finances. Councils across the UK are using one particular trick, and I'm not being dramatic here, this is actually happening right now, to raise your council tax practically overnight. And the scary part? Most homeowners have absolutely no clue it's even happening until they get that letter through the post. So grab that cuppa, because in today's video, I'm going to break down exactly what this trick is, how councils are getting away with it, what it means for your wallet, and most importantly, what you can actually do to protect yourself. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is where we break down everything happening in the UK housing market in real time. No fluff, no nonsense, just the actual facts you need to make smart decisions about your property and your money. Now, before I dive into today's topic, I want to say this isn't about scaremongering. This is about information. Because when you understand how the system works, you can actually work within it rather than getting caught out by surprise. Right, so let's talk about what's actually going on with councils and your tax bill. So here's the thing. The trick I'm talking about is something called council tax band reassessment. Now, I know that sounds boring, proper dry stuff, but stick with me because this is where it gets interesting. You see, council tax bands in England and Scotland haven't been properly revalued since 1991. Yes, you heard that right. 1991. That's over 30 years ago. Your council tax band is based on what your property was worth back when people were listening to Bryan Adams and watching Terminator 2 at the cinema. Now, councils know this. They know that property values have changed dramatically since then. Some areas have seen prices double, triple, even quadruple in certain parts of London and the southeast. So what are they doing? They're actively encouraging band reassessments. And here's where the trick comes in. When you make certain changes to your property, when you extend it, convert the loft, add a conservatory, or even just improve the garden significantly, councils can request that the Valuation Office Agency, the VOA, takes another look at your property. And guess what happens when they take another look? 9 times out of 10, your property gets bumped up to a higher council tax band, and that means more money out of your pocket every single month. Now let me explain exactly how councils are triggering these reassessments because they're being proper clever about it. First off, they're monitoring planning applications. Every time you submit a planning application for an extension, a loft conversion, or any significant work, that information goes into a system. Councils have access to this data, and they're using it. Some councils have actually set up dedicated teams whose entire job is to identify properties that might have increased in value. They're looking at building control applications, they're checking Google Maps satellite imagery to spot new conservatories and extensions, and they're even driving around neighbourhoods looking for changes. I'm not making this up. There have been reports of council workers literally photographing properties that look like they've been improved. Second, they're cross-referencing with estate agent listings. When you put your house on the market and the estate agent takes those lovely photos showing off your new kitchen extension, guess who might be looking at those photos? That's right. And if your property is listed at a price that suggests it should be in a higher band, that can trigger a review. Third, and this one's particularly sneaky, they're using data from home improvement grants. Remember all those green home grants and energy efficiency schemes? Some councils are using information about who received grants for double glazing, insulation, or solar panels to identify homes that might have increased in value. Now, I want to be fair here, councils aren't necessarily doing anything illegal, they're working within the rules. But the point is they're actively looking for ways to increase their revenue, and your council tax is fair game. Let's talk numbers because this is where it gets real. The difference between council tax bands can be significant. I'm talking hundreds of pounds a year. In some parts of the country, moving from Band D to Band E could cost you an extra £500 to £700 annually. Over 10 years, that's potentially £7,000 extra. And here's something most people don't realise. Once your band is increased, it's incredibly difficult to get it reduced again. The VOA won't just knock it back down because you ask nicely. You'd need to prove that there's been a material decrease in your property's value, which in most cases, especially in the current market, is virtually impossible. I've been looking at the data, and in the last financial year alone, there were tens of thousands of successful band increases across England. Meanwhile, the number of successful band reductions was a fraction of that. The system is weighted towards increases, not decreases, and councils know this. Now, let's connect this to what's happening in the UK housing market right now, because this is crucial context. Property prices across the UK have been on a rollercoaster over the past few years. We saw massive increases during the pandemic, a bit of cooling off in 2023, and now we're seeing regional variations that are quite stark. In areas where prices have risen significantly, the gap between what your property is actually worth and what it was worth in 1991 is enormous. And that gap represents potential revenue for councils who are, let's be honest, absolutely strapped for cash. Local authority budgets have been squeezed for over a decade, central government funding has been cut, social care costs are rising, and councils are desperate for money. Council tax is one of the few revenue streams they have direct control over, so when they see a neighbourhood that's been gentrified, where properties have been extended and improved, where values have shot up, they see pound signs, they see an opportunity to increase their tax base without having to raise the council tax rate itself, which would be politically unpopular. This is strategic, this is calculated, and homeowners need to understand this. Let me give you some real examples of how this is playing out. I spoke to a homeowner in Manchester, we'll call him Dave, who added a modest loft conversion to his 3-bed semi. Nothing fancy, just an extra bedroom and a small bathroom. Cost him about £40,000. 3 months after the work was completed, he got a letter from the VOA. His property was being reassessed. Long story short, he went from Band C to Band D. That's an extra £350 a year in council tax. Now, Dave did the maths. Over the next 20 years, assuming council tax rates stay the same, which they won't, they'll go up, that loft conversion is going to cost him an extra £7,000 in tax alone. That's on top of the £40,000 he spent on the build. Did anyone tell Dave this might happen before he started the work? No. Did his builder mention it? No. Did the council send a helpful letter warning him? Absolutely not. Another example, a family in Bristol extended their kitchen and added a conservatory. They went from Band D to Band E. The annual increase, over £500, and they only found out when the council tax bill arrived. These aren't isolated cases. This is happening across the country, and it's happening more frequently as councils become more aggressive in their approach. Let's get specific about what can trigger a reassessment, because knowledge is power here. Extensions are the big one. If you add square footage to your property, that's almost certainly going to increase its value, and councils know this. Loft conversions, rear extensions, side extensions, even garage conversions can all trigger a review. Conservatories are another one. That lovely glass room you added for your plants, it could bump you up a band. Significant internal improvements are trickier. Generally speaking, internal work like a new kitchen or bathroom won't trigger a reassessment on its own. But if combined with other factors, it could be considered. Change of use is important. If you convert part of your property from residential to commercial use or vice versa, that's definitely going to get noticed. Demolition and rebuild. If you knock down part of your property and rebuild it, that's a trigger. And here's one that catches people out. Splitting a property into flats or combining flats into a single property. Any change to the basic structure of the dwelling can result in a reassessment. Now, here's something really important that most people don't know. When your property is reassessed, the new band doesn't just apply from today onwards. In many cases, it can be backdated. This means you could potentially owe council tax arrears for previous years. There are rules about how far back this can go, and it varies depending on the circumstances. But imagine getting a bill not just for the increased council tax going forward, but also for the difference in what you should have been paying for the last year or two. This has happened to people. It's a nasty shock when you're expecting a modest increase and you get hit with a backdated bill for £1,000 or more. Right, so now we've covered the problem, let's talk solutions. What can you actually do to protect yourself? First, check your current band. Before you do any work on your property, check what band you're in and understand where the boundaries are. The VOA has a tool online where you can check your band and see what band similar properties in your area are in. If you find that properties similar to yours in terms of size, location and condition are in a lower band, you might actually be overpaying already. You could apply for a band reduction. But be careful here, because if you apply for a reassessment and the VOA finds that you should actually be in a higher band, they'll put you up, not down. Second, consider the council tax implications before you undertake major work. I'm not saying don't improve your home, but go into it with your eyes open. Factor the potential council tax increase into your calculations when you're budgeting for an extension. Third, time your sale carefully. If you're planning to sell your property after making improvements, be aware that the act of selling can trigger a reassessment. The VOA sometimes reviews properties when they're listed for sale, especially if the asking price suggests a significant increase in value. Fourth, keep records. If you receive a band increase that you believe is unfair, you have the right to appeal. Having detailed records of your property's condition, comparable properties in your area, and any factors that might support your case is essential. Fifth, understand your appeal rights. You can appeal a council tax band decision, but there are strict time limits and procedures. Generally, you have 6 months from when you become responsible for council tax on a property to challenge the band. After that, your options are more limited. Now let's zoom out and talk about the bigger picture here, because this isn't just about individual homeowners, this is about the entire UK housing market and how we fund local services. The council tax system is fundamentally broken. It's based on valuations from 1991. It's regressive, meaning that people in lower value properties often pay a higher percentage of their property value than people in higher value properties. And it creates perverse incentives. And think about it, if improving your home means you'll pay more tax, that's a disincentive to improve your home. That's bad for the construction industry, bad for the local economy, and bad for housing quality overall. There have been calls for years to reform council tax, to base it on current property values, to make it fairer, to bring it into the 21st century, but successive governments have kicked this can down the road because any reform would create winners and losers, and no politician wants to be seen as raising taxes for millions of homeowners. So we're stuck with this outdated system, and councils, desperate for revenue, are squeezing every pound they can from it using the tools available to them. Let me share my predictions for what's coming next, based on my analysis of the housing market and council finances. I think we're going to see councils become even more aggressive about reassessments in the coming years. The financial pressures aren't going away. Social care costs are rising. Central government funding isn't keeping pace. Councils need money. I think we might eventually see a wholesale revaluation of properties, updating bands to reflect current values. This has been discussed for years, and while there's no imminent plan, the pressure is building. If and when this happens, millions of homeowners will see their council tax change, and for many it will go up significantly. I also think we'll see more transparency requirements. There might be rules requiring councils to notify homeowners before they trigger a reassessment, or requirements for builders and planners to inform homeowners about potential council tax implications of their work. But for now, we're in a world where councils are using every trick in the book, and homeowners need to be informed. So what's the takeaway from all of this? First, don't be caught by surprise. Know that improving your property can have tax implications. Factor this into your planning. Second, check your band. Make sure you're not already overpaying, but be careful about challenging your band if you think you might be underpaying. Third, understand your rights. If your band is increased, you have the right to appeal. Use it if you think the decision is wrong. Fourth, stay informed. The rules around council tax are complicated and they change. Keep up with what's happening in your local area and nationally. And finally, remember that you're not alone. Thousands of homeowners across the UK are dealing with this same issue. There are forums, support groups, and resources out there to help you navigate the system. I hope this video has been useful. If it has, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we put out videos like this every week, breaking down what's happening in the UK housing market. Drop a comment below and let me know if you've been affected by a council tax band increase. I'd love to hear your stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.